One of the most commonly asked questions, if not the most asked question, is how we loop with a dog, what that's like, how she goes to the bathroom, anything and everything you could think of that has to do with the dog, we've probably been asked it. So in this video, we're gonna walk you through our experience on the Great Loop with the dog.
Ripley is a 3.5, almost 4 golden doodle. She's 50 pounds and she is a ball of energy all the time. And she's been on the loop with us the whole time. And she's actually been everywhere with us. We've been over backwards, it seems like, for her, which we have no problem doing. We got her in the apartment, our first ever apartment, and she moved into a townhouse with us. She comes to all the family holidays. We drive home for Christmas instead of fly because of her. And now she lives on the boat. And we never really thought twice about not bringing her. So here she is, about to jump off on land.
Go on. Good girl.
One unique thing about Ripley is she loves to swim, but for some reason she won't fetch a stick. So if you throw a rock and it splashes, she likes to splash.
Yeah.
And you throw the stick next to the splash and she'll bring it back.
And for anybody saying that that might be mean and why don't you throw her a ball or a frisbee or a toy, there's no guarantee she's gonna bring it back. So that's why we only throw rocks or sticks for her. But while she is getting some much needed land time, we figured we would spill all the secrets of looping with a dog. The first thing, or the first tip that I would say, is get your dog acclimated to the boat. If this is a new to you boat, if you haven't had it and the dog hasn't done weekends with you, I think it's very important that you get them acclimated to their new living quarters. For us, we moved onto the boat full time, a full 2 months before we left on the loop, and that was a huge growing period for Ripley there. We practiced getting on and off the dinghy. We overused the word home. We're going home, let's go home. And she was starting to understand that the boat was now home. We also practiced leaving her alone. We put a camera inside of the boat, and what we would do is when we were living on the mooring ball, we would put the camera on, we would leave on the dinghy and just go to the dinghy dock. We would not go far. We'd turn on the camera and we would watch her to see how she reacted. That way, if anything crazy did happen, we were just a quick dinghy ride away. And I think that was also important for us to also get used to it as well, because we had a lot of nerves going into it of leaving her alone in a new place. And so that camera was a game changer. I'm gonna mention a couple things throughout the video. I will have them all linked in the description if you're at all interested in purchasing any of those. They'll all be affiliate links, and we appreciate your support if you happen to buy them.
And thinking of the dog and the loop, that started in the beginning with boat buying. And we wanted to get a boat that we knew Ripley would be comfortable on. So for that, we have a full walk around of the boat. That helps us for docking purposes, but also Ripley, we have the doors open while we work during the day, and she can walk, she can go sit up on deck, and we don't have to worry about her falling off. Now, some boats do that by putting a netting up around the stainless steel. We wish we had a stair access to get up to the fly bridge. We unfortunately have a ladder, and stairs would have been really nice, because then she could freely go up and down while we go up and down. But we have to lift her up and down with a harness. And that's a really good point, because the heavier your dog is, the more athletic it needs to be, I think. Because Ripley's 50 pounds and she's about the max we would want in terms of, lifting her on and off a dock or up and down from the fly bridge. So I would say, if it's a really old like lab, totally doable, but you'll have to make sure your boat's accessible with a ramp and stairs and maybe non-skid mats laid down. So there's nothing that I think should turn anybody away from bringing their dog, because they are a man's best friend.
They're part of the family.
And they deserve to come on the adventure too.
Okay, Evan just mentioned a couple items that I want to talk about. The first thing being, we had never had a harness for Ripley until we started the loop. We'd only had a collar on her. I think a harness is a very important piece because it allows us to lift her in and out of the boat if we need to, or if we're in like a more tricky docking situation. On top of that, we also have a life jacket for her. Ripley loves to swim, and so we just put the life jacket on her just in case she gets too tired and won't get herself out. It's also easier when we are in the boat to pick her up with the life jacket as well. Another item that Evan mentioned was a dog ramp. We personally do not have a dog ramp, but one of our friends on Up Next, they do. They have a very large dog, and we actually had to utilize their dog ramp when we were in New Jersey one time for a very tricky docking situation. We couldn't get Ripley on and off the boat. So I will link their dog ramp down below as well if that's something that's of interest to you. It worked great, but we just felt it was a piece of equipment that we didn't need because we were able to manage most of the time on our own.
The number one question we get about dogs is, where do they go to the bathroom? And that's not just a question of non-loopers, but even loopers we've passed along the way come up to our boat and be like, where does she go to the bathroom? Well, she goes on land like a normal dog. She doesn't always go on grass.
Sorry.
So she doesn't always go on grass, but she does get the opportunity to go on land pretty much all the time. Whether it's gravel or a street or a parking lot, she does go to land. We try to do it 3 times a day, which is good for us because it forces us to get off the boat, go for a walk, stretch our legs. And that's what's unique about the Great Loop. You always have really a place to tuck away. You don't have to do any overnights if you don't want to. And whether it's a marina, a free dock, or an anchorage, that's why it's really important to have a mode of transportation like this Highfield 310 that Bourbon City Yacht Tenders has graciously helped us out with, and is the sponsor of today's video. He is located in Louisville, Kentucky, and Dustin, the owner, is a Gold Looper himself. And that's what I think is super unique about having him help you find the right tender for your boat, is because he knows what the loop is, what's important, and he can provide awesome customer service. He drove all the way out to New York to deliver a dinghy from Kentucky, so definitely reach out to him if you have any needs for a dinghy in the future, or if it's outfitting your current dinghy with a new motor or a console, he can help you out.
Our number one piece of advice if you plan to bring your dog on the Great Loop is to have a reliable mode of transport to land from your larger vessel. Especially after our recent experience coming down the river system, you will find yourself anchoring a handful of times. That's why we're proud to be working with Bourbon City Yacht Tenders, a proud AGLCA sponsor. If there's anyone who knows what loopers need, it's somebody like Dustin who has completed the loop himself. We actually just swapped out our PVC Highfield for a Hypalon version, so if you're in the market for a slightly used but well taken care of dinghy, you can contact Dustin or check the link in our description. I hate to tease you, but we are going to do a whole separate video on anchoring, how we find anchorages, what determines a good anchorage, and how that is especially important because we have Ripley. So stay tuned for the next video where we talk all about anchoring. But I'll move on to the next thing about having a dog on the loop, and that is vaccinations. They do need to be updated on vaccines if you are going to Canada. If you're not going to Canada or the Bahamas, I guess you don't have to worry about it, but I'm not a vet, but I would recommend that you have your dog updated on all vaccines regardless. I'm also not going to go into the specifics of those vaccines because it kind of changes. It even changed from 2024 to 2025 for us. So I'm just going to have a link to the CDC website below. It's actually a bigger deal once you go into Canada and then come back to the United States. They do need a microchip, which Ripley did not have, and we had to have one put in her when we were in New York before we crossed into Canada. I'm also going to continue on to some medications for dogs. We have a prescription of trazodone from our vet. That is a medication that can help calm your dog down if they experience a little bit of anxiety like Ripley does. If we're going to be gone for an 8-hour period, whether that's exploring a city or getting some errands done, we might give her one of those just so she stays calm while we're gone. We also purchased some medical grade glue for Ripley. She had a little bit of an accident back in New York where she did have to get some stitches, and had that happened in Canada where we had no access to any veterinary care, the glue would have been very, very important for us to have because, as you know, dogs don't sit still. They move around. You can't tell them to sit still like a child. So I would highly recommend having some sort of medical glue on hand for your dog.
People often ask us, what do we do about Ripley's grooming and how does she get a bath? And well, we just decided to take that into our own hands. We bought a clipper that's designed for golden doodles and their tight curls and their long tangly hair. And I groom her myself. I just put the same guard on and do her whole body all at the same time. So what's nice is we don't have to worry about lining that up, taking her to get groomed. I know there are boats that do that, and it's definitely possible in some of the towns we stop in, but we groom her ourselves. We give her a bath when we get to marinas, and she loves it. The shorter she is, the better she feels, and the less dirty her paws get, so it keeps our boat cleaner as well.
The last thing I will say about looping with the dog is to maybe consider pet insurance. Now, I say that when we don't have any, but one of our vet friends made a good point, and she said, what dollar amount are you willing to spend before you say no? And for us, that number is pretty high. But if that number is pretty high and you don't have that in your savings or you can't afford it when the time comes, you may want to consider a pet insurance. There's several out there. I would do your own research on which one is best for you. But when we were talking to our vet friend about that, it definitely made us rethink a few things. And we have been doing our own research, and that might be something we add into our budget in the future. But something to consider. And yeah, I think that's all for this Looping with a Dog video. Like I said, stay tuned for a video all about anchoring where we're gonna talk more about how we find those anchorages that are perfect for Ripley, just like this one. And until next time.
Love you, bye.